This is a project to bring together the remains of the existing grassroots independence movement and build from it a new, collectively owned and democratically run campaigning network. A practical, mutually supportive network from which we can continue to grow popular support for Scottish independence in every community and in every field of expertise that our vibrant, enthusiastic and multi-talented rank and file membership can take it. This is our aim, and this short film will set out in some detail how the Yes movement formed, how it operated, what happened to it after the referendum, where we are now, and what we propose to do about it. On the calling of the referendum, the SNP, civic pro-Indy bodies, the Greens and SSP created, funded and appointed a leadership to Yes Scotland. This Yes Scotland leadership, with the Yes supporting political parties, produced media output, campaign strategy and policy. Central to this was the encouragement of community-based campaigning groups and shops. These Yes shops and campaigning groups then started popping up spontaneously all around the country. Independent, autonomous and local, each of these groups then made contact with Yes Scotland HQ for advice and merchandise. Funds were raised locally and Yes gear was paid for locally. Each shop and Yes community group grew their campaign locally. From the beginning, each of these groups were local umbrella organisations that included party political activists, non-party political activists, a newly politicised general population, Facebook pages, websites, outreach projects, all in total support of the Yes vote. These groups and shops became the central focus of public participation and interaction with the Yes campaign. For every Yes group or shop that formed, there was a unique local balance of all these attributes, and it was from each of those balances of local priorities and knowledge that gave the grassroots movements its autonomous and locally focused power. In the same way that each of these groups went to Yes Scotland HQ to buy their merchandise and unify under the strong central brand of Yes, so the individual activists of these groups went to websites such as Wings, Bella, Newsnet, and to independent campaigning organisations such as Radical Independence Campaign, The Common Wheel, or Women for Independence, and others, to self-educate, develop their Yes arguments, and begin to project to the general public the positive, hopeful, and practical messages we all recognise now as the bedrock of the Yes campaign and movement. This was the grassroots, and that process of formation, growth and self-education happened largely independent of any Yes Scotland HQ input. Yes Scotland HQ still had responsibility and control over media output and official Yes campaign strategy. Yes Scotland was still the visible leadership nationally and the sole supplier to the shops and groups of Yes gear, but in reality, the Yes groups were running their own local campaigns, prioritising messages, organising events, and raising funds to purchase their campaigning Yes gear. This gradual dislocation of Yes Scotland HQ leadership from the day-to-day grassroots running of the campaigns on the ground manifested itself in many ways during the campaign. On a purely practical level, as the grassroots campaign reached a crescendo, the centralised Yes HQ became a supply and distribution bottleneck for much needed campaign merchandise, restricting the effectiveness of the grassroots to visibly maximise support and fundraising among the general population. Secondly, the official media output and campaign policies of Yes Scotland HQ no longer completely represented the views of the grassroots opinion. A good example of this divergence were the spontaneous grassroots anti-BBC bias demonstrations. These important events were first ignored, then frowned upon, and finally led to Yes Scotland confirming to the mainstream media that there was, Of course, no anti-yes bias being displayed by the BBC. Not a view easily found among the grassroots campaigners, and effectively a misrepresentation of grassroots opinion by their official leadership and our mainstream media voice. And then the no vote. Overnight, Yes Scotland HQ closed. At the very point of the indie movement's most traumatic moment. Our national leadership disappeared and the grassroots movement's parlous position suddenly became clear. Denied our central Yes HQ, what had appeared to be a national vibrant network of Yes shops and activist groups rooted in every city, town and village of Scotland, was disabled overnight. Each of those local campaigns, activists and shops still existed, but now found themselves without a formal network and alone. The intensely local, decentralised and geographically disparate nature of the autonomous Yes groups that had been such a feature and strength of the grassroots campaign now denied a centre, and their simple campaigning goal of a Yes vote found themselves adrift. Adrift without a policy for the way forward, and worse, without even a Yes mechanism to make contact with their fellow Yes groups in order to try and quickly formulate one. Some ad hoc informal contacts were built up during the heat of the referendum campaign, but no formal contact list or registry of our network was ever made available to the grassroots movement by Yes HQ, either before or after they disbanded. As a consequence, except for limited unofficial email lists and Facebook pages, the enormous potential of the existing grassroots had no way of formulating a national strategy that each individual group could consolidate and regroup around, and so that potential simply started to dissipate. As a result of the disappearance of Yes HQ, plus the total lack of any post-no planning and the vacuum that created, activists, Yes voters and grassroots organisers understandably quickly fell back on the established political structures of Yes parties and campaigning groups such as Radical Independence Campaign, the Commonweal, Women for Independence and others, who were from the start formed independently of Yes Scotland HQ. This led directly to the surge in Yes Party political membership, as well as the strengthening and deepening of those independently formed Yes movement groups. The surge has indeed been awe-inspiring in party political terms, culminating in the shaking of Westminster we have just witnessed. It has also, however, unfortunately meant that the vast non-party political grassroots structures painstakingly built up during IndieRef 1 are now falling fallow, with many activist groups drifting away or changing direction. After the tsunami at Westminster, and now the real possibility of a future IndieRef 2 within reach again, it's a position of unnecessary weakness. It's also an opportunity to avoid repeating those campaigning mistakes made during IndieRef 1. This is where we are today, and here is, with your support, what we propose the grassroots should do about it. We have spent the last 6 months hunting down and making contact with as many surviving Yes, indie supporting grassroots groups still operating. We currently have 65 members spread throughout the country, with others interested but not yet committed. This is what we propose. The National Yes Registry takes the form of a secure internet forum owned and run as a true collective by its membership groups. The forum will be an extension of each of the existing autonomous independent local groups that make up our membership. Each group will provide 2 delegates to voice and relate group concerns to and from the forum. This will give a tangible form to the existing groups spread throughout the country, making us visible again. It will also, at a stroke, allow every group to talk directly with their fellow groups. No mediation, no middle power structure, If a group has a problem, an idea to share, an issue to air, experience to teach, a project to support, anything they think relevant, they simply bring it to the forum. These groups interested in that particular subject just take it from there. All authorities gain solely through grassroots appraisal and approval. Use of the forum can give economies of scale for the purchase of merchandise, equipment, leaflets and materials. It will encourage sharing and sourcing of equipment and expertise among the groups, from a simple badge making machine to graphic design, legal, political and organisational know-how. It will be a place for newly formed groups to simply plug into what is their already existing national yes movement. A place to build practical self-help networks and support mechanisms for new and existing indie groups. A place where ideas, proposals, fundraisers, newsletters, press contact, constitutional developments and more raised by any member and taken direct to the entire National Yes Registry to evaluate, raise support and, if necessary, take a vote. In this way, an authentic voice of the grassroots movement can be formed and heard with authority on issues of importance to us, the grassroots. As a result come IndieRef 2. The grassroots will already be speaking and leading itself, and able to take its seat alongside any other yes leaderships. From the formation of this authentic and authoritative voice of the grassroots, many more advantages and opportunities become available. With such a mechanism, the grassroots movement could, for example, use its voice to definitively press for a new independence referendum. The SNP have said that a new IndieRef will only come when the Scottish people say they want one. We could be a voice, among others, demanding one as soon as possible. With such a voice, the grassroots could use their seat alongside other indie campaigning leadership bodies and have some influence over the timing, strategy and tactics to be deployed during the next indie referendum, whenever that takes place. Properly mobilised via new and mainstream media, the voice of the grassroots yes movement could become a regular agenda-setting tool for the new politics of Scotland. Surely, to help guide the national agenda toward independence should be the top priority and role of the grassroots movement. To create an effective counter to the partisan, privately owned and establishment-funded unionist think tanks that currently dominate the mainstream media with its anti-independence agenda. Should a group find that they need a piece of equipment in order to advance a local project, or maybe need some tax advice on opening a shop, or perhaps urgently require merchandise for a one-off event, their delegate can simply post their request to the entire registry direct on the forum. This can then be assessed and responded using the power of the entire forum and all the knowledge, skills and resources that it has collectively. So those that have bought that piece of equipment already or recently opened their own shop or have a couple of boxes of needed merchandise can make direct contact with the group in need. Problem solved. Similarly, any group that has an issue they would like to raise with other groups, be that campaigning, a proposal, a local issue that might have national, regional or local relevance, or simply suggestions or ideas that the grassroots movement would find use or of interest, then that group's delegate can post to the entire Yes Registry forum direct for discussion, debate and if necessary, take it to a vote. Issues raised in the forum can be taken back to the groups for discussion and decision, after which the delegates will relay their group's decision back to the forum for a vote. Once this vote is taken, we as the grassroots can now act nationally, and this can then be actioned through collective grassroots campaigning or contact and pressure through outlets in new and mainstream media. This may also throw up some very unexpected issues that geographically disparate members considered at best a regional or local issue, but through exposure to the entire Yes Registry forum, find it has a strong and important resonance with the movement nationally. These issues, once voted on or resolved, can then be used to help set the political agenda, be that through action in grassroots or contacts in the media. A similar setup can be incorporated in which external non-affiliated bodies could introduce issues to the forum for debate and, if necessary, a vote. This could deal with or be in response to a governmental policy change and the effects on the community, for example. Or maybe a forum position will need to be taken on an issue such as the EU in-out referendum or any other general issue that the grassroots feel is relevant. A simple but practical example of how this could be achieved. Commonweal and others are consistently producing policy documents and analysis on specific and detailed ways forward for an independent Scotland. If such a policy document was introduced to the forum and delegates chaired debates on it at each of their group meetings, bringing back their decision for a vote in the forum, if a majority vote in support, Commonweal would be able to launch their document already with the weight that democratic support of the grassroots Yes movement brings. In this way, the grassroots movement will be able to lend its authority to various and already existing pro-Indy organisations and policies. In essence, sponsoring our own movement's think tanks. This should help make such documents more newsworthy and harder to ignore. If successful, this strategy will help encourage more of this kind of work to be undertaken and help deepen the knowledge base of all the membership groups, helping to disseminate complex policy ideas and agenda throughout the population, as well as hopefully gaining better media coverage in the air war. This concept of dissemination, understanding and evaluation of ideas can supercharge already existing projects from within the greater grassroots movement. For example, the Margot McDonald Foundation will soon be crowdsourcing funds in order to train and send out educators to raise the political knowledge of the grassroots on subjects such as oil, the economy, finance, Europe, foreign affairs, amongst others. This fabulous project is of great importance to the effectiveness of any future referendum campaign. Think how helpful a National Yes Registry would be to effectively organise events and lecture tours for such a project. The forum could group together members into areas in order to organise regular indie educational courses for themselves and the general public in their areas. With an effective network and the right attitude, the geographical spread of the groups that we already have, we could easily make this happen. So, that's where we are, and also what we propose to do about it. Over the last 6 months, we have tracked down the details and made contact with 65 indie supporting groups, and we have begun to create the National Yes Registry membership. If they, and you, would like to see this vision of a truly collective grassroots campaigning network created, with the capability to find the authentic voice of our grassroots communities, and use its democratic authority to lead and further the cause of Scottish independence, then we need your support to make it happen. Before a true collective can be formed from initial membership of 65 groups or more, a lot of groundwork, consultation and negotiation must take place. A secure forum must be built with the capability to grow and expand organically, rapidly and safely. We need to create an interim constitution that each group of the collective can sign up to. We need to find, recruit and train delegates from each of the membership groups, not difficult, but time consuming considering the geography. In short, We need to get many ducks in a row before we pull the trigger and launch as a fully fledged membership-owned collective. With the pre-formed interim structures in place and ready to discuss, debate and develop its final constitution with elective office bearers' accounts and legal status. It must also be able to start operating effectively from day one of launch, on all the campaigning requirements this film has explained it is capable of fulfilling. All this and quickly, as we have another election campaign coming in a year, which the forum could play a very large part in, from Yes Shetland to Yes Alliance Wigtonshire, and Yes St Andrews in the east to Yes on the Isle of Bute in the west. So, for all the above reasons, we are proposing a very tight, but we believe with the goodwill of the grassroots Yes movement, a very doable deadline of the 18th of September this year. This will entail at least the need for a full-time staff member on minimum wage for the time running up to launch. It will require funds to design, set up and run the secure forum, for equipment and web space to maintain the forum, and it will require travel expenses so that the employee can meet the groups from all around the country to fully explain the National Yes Registry project and recruit and train the necessary delegates. We also plan to continue to make more explanatory films such as the one you have just watched, covering subjects such as collective ownership of the National Yes Registry, the constitution of the National Yes Registry, delegates' rights, roles and responsibilities towards their group and the forum, and voting in the collective. If you would like to help get this project to launch, we need some funding. Please donate through the website NationalYESregistry.scot.